God is telling you to move on. Don't ignore this warning. There are moments when something inside you refuses to stay silent. You wake up with a heaviness you cannot explain, a quiet tension that follows you through the day, as if your spirit is trying to speak a truth your mind has been avoiding. When God begins to shift your path, He rarely shouts. He stirs the atmosphere around you, allowing a subtle discomfort to rise, not to scare you but to awaken you. You sense that where you are no longer fits who you are becoming. And deep down, you know this feeling is not random. It is a divine signal calling for attention. If you have felt this inner pull, this message may be the sign you were meant to hear today. The moment everything feels off. When God is preparing to move you into a new season, He rarely begins with an external sign. He starts within you. It begins subtly, almost quietly, in a way that makes you wonder if you are imagining things. You enter the same environment you have known for years, but it no longer feels the same. The colors seem duller, the conversations feel forced, and even the silence carries a weight you cannot describe. You try to push the feeling aside, telling yourself it is just a phase, just fatigue, just a temporary discomfort. Yet the uneasiness follows you from room to room, from task to task, from morning to night. It is gentle but persistent. It is calm but undeniable. It is as if your spirit knows something your mind has not yet understood. This is often the first moment when God begins to shift the direction of your life. You do not see anything wrong on the outside. Nothing dramatic has changed. Yet something inside you quietly whispers that you no longer belong where you are. The place that once felt safe now feels limiting. The people who once energized you now leave you drained. The routine that once gave structure now feels like a cage. You sense that you are staying out of habit, not purpose. You feel present in your body, yet distant in your soul. And even though everything looks familiar, it no longer fits the person God is shaping you to become. This internal dissonance is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of awakening. God is stirring the ground beneath your spirit, gently breaking your attachment to the old, so that you can recognize the call of the new. This feeling is not chaos. It is not anxiety without meaning. It is not restlessness without direction. It is the spiritual signal that God uses to loosen your grip on the places and seasons that have reached their appointed time. You may try to ignore it, hoping the discomfort will fade, but it deepens slowly, as if God is inviting you to pay attention. You begin to notice things you never questioned before. Words that once encouraged you now feel empty. Paths you once walked with confidence now feel narrow. You start asking questions you never dared to ask. Why does this no longer feel right? Why do I feel disconnected from a life that once felt purposeful? Why do I sense a quiet urging to pay attention to something I cannot yet name? These questions are not accidents. They are part of the transition God is preparing in your heart. There comes a moment when you realize the shift is not external at all. It is spiritual. It is God softening your attachment to the familiar so that the unfamiliar will not scare you. It is God preparing you emotionally before He moves you physically. He changes your desires before He changes your direction. He unsettles your comfort so you will not mistake stagnation for peace. You start to see that the uneasiness is not a burden, but a message. It is the divine tension that pulls you out of what is no longer aligned with your purpose. And the more you sit with it, the more you realize that something inside you is being stretched, expanded, awakened. You are no longer the person you were when you arrived here. And God will not allow you to shrink yourself to fit a place He is calling you to leave. This moment when everything feels off is the spiritual threshold between seasons. It is the first sign that God is stirring a transition. He allows the familiar to lose its sweetness so that obedience can lead you to the next chapter. You may not know where God is calling you yet. You may not understand the reason behind the shift, but the feeling itself carries purpose. It is preparing you to listen, to seek, to discern, to open your heart to the possibility that God is redirecting your steps. When everything around you looks the same but everything inside you feels different, you are standing at the doorway of change, and God often starts this process long before you realize He is guiding you towards something greater. This inner shift is the first invitation to pay attention. The unseen transition. There are seasons when God begins to shift the atmosphere around you long before anything in your physical life changes. You look at your daily routine, and everything appears normal. Yet something in the air feels different. It is subtle, almost invisible, but it carries a weight that makes you pause. You cannot point to a specific event or a tangible reason, but you sense that the environment no longer welcomes your spirit the way it once did. This is one of the clearest signs that God is preparing a transition. He adjusts the spiritual climate before He adjusts your circumstances. It is His way of guiding your heart gently toward the direction He wants you to move, even when you have not yet recognized the path that lies ahead. You begin noticing small shifts that almost seem insignificant. People around you act the same, yet their words land differently inside you. Opportunities that once excited you now feel empty and distant. Activities that used to bring joy slowly lose their spark. Your surroundings feel strangely quieter, like the calm before a storm. Not a destructive one, but the kind that rearranges things so something new can grow. You sense that God is moving pieces behind the scenes, organizing details you cannot see. This invisible work often happens long before He reveals His plan. It is His way of preparing the soil while your eyes still see the same landscape. This transition is not meant to confuse you, it is meant to awaken you. God shifts the atmosphere to loosen your emotional attachment to a season that is coming to an end. He softens your dependence on what is familiar, so you will not resist the change He is preparing. You may feel a mix of emotions you cannot fully explain. A quiet restlessness, a longing for something you cannot describe, a sense that you are being stretched, expanded, drawn towards something your heart has not yet named. All of this is part of the unseen transition. God stirs your spirit long before He moves your feet. It is His invitation to pay attention, to become sensitive to His voice, to notice what you once overlooked. During this phase, you might try to push away the sensations, convincing yourself that nothing is changing. Yet the inner pull persists. You feel as though the space around you no longer aligns with your inner growth. You sense that the season you are in has reached its full purpose. When God begins to transition you, He allows your spiritual senses to awaken before your circumstances shift. You may feel a strange mix of peace and urgency, calm and anticipation. This is the divine tension that prepares you for obedience. It is not meant to scare you, but to position you. It is God aligning your heart with His timing. The unseen transition is where God does His deepest work. He refines your discernment, teaches you to recognize His voice, and prepares you emotionally for what is coming. He allows you to feel disconnected from what is ending so that you can be drawn toward what is beginning. This is why the atmosphere changes before anything else does. If your surroundings remained comfortable, you would ignore the promptings of your spirit. So God gently shifts the tone of your environment, encouraging you to release what no longer supports your calling. The change is subtle at first, but it grows stronger as God prepares you for the next step. This is the moment when faith becomes essential. You may not see anything changing on the outside, but internally, something is already unfolding. God is moving you even when you feel still. He is opening doors you cannot see and closing ones you are not ready to let go of. In the unseen transition, God builds your readiness for the path ahead. He shapes your perception so that when the next step appears, you will recognize it as His hand guiding you. What feels like uncertainty is often the preparation for clarity. What feels like restlessness is often the prelude to direction. The unseen transition is not a delay. It is the first stage of your transformation, the silent preparation for the moment when God will reveal the next chapter of your journey. The silent withdrawal of peace. There comes a point in your journey when God begins to remove the sense of peace that once held your life together. It does not happen suddenly. It happens quietly, almost gently, the way a fading light slowly dims a room. You notice it first in your spirit. The calm you once carried into certain places begins to slip away. What used to feel natural now feels forced. What once felt comforting now feels heavy. You try to ignore it, telling yourself you are tired or overwhelmed, but the absence of peace lingers. It is subtle, yet unmistakably there, and it follows you as if God Himself is placing a hand on your shoulder, urging you to notice what your heart has been trying to tell you. The withdrawal of peace is not a punishment. It is a spiritual signal. God uses it to disrupt your comfort so you can recognize what no longer aligns with your purpose. Peace is the language of God. When He removes it, He is not abandoning you. He is guiding you. You may find yourself sitting in environments that once made you feel whole, yet something inside refuses to settle. You try to force yourself to stay engaged, to stay committed, to stay connected, but your spirit no longer rests there. The peace that used to flow freely inside you now comes in fragments, never enough to fill the space the way it once did. This internal shift is not random. It is God redirecting your spirit toward a place where your peace can return. You begin to recognize the withdrawal of peace through small yet profound moments. You sit in a meeting, a living room, a workplace, a relationship, and suddenly you feel a quiet uneasiness sitting beneath every thought. Nothing dramatic has changed, yet something feels spiritually out of place. The conversations seem rehearsed. The environment feels stiff. The connection you once relied on now feels distant. You tell yourself you can push through it, that you can adapt, that the feeling will pass, but it stays. And the longer you ignore it, the louder it becomes in your soul. This is one of the clearest ways God speaks during transition. He removes peace so that you no longer confuse comfort with calling. During this stage, you may feel torn. Part of you wants to hold on to what is familiar. Another part of you aches to step away. The tension inside you grows, not to create fear, but to create clarity. When God wants you to move, He refuses to let you find rest in a place that no longer carries your assignment. He withdraws His peace so your heart will no longer settle for something beneath your purpose. You may try to rationalize what you feel, searching for logical explanations, but spiritual signals rarely obey logic. Peace is not just a feeling, it is confirmation. When it disappears, God is showing you that your season is shifting. You may notice that the more you try to stay where peace has left, the more drained you feel. You might wake up with a heaviness that never seems to lift. You may feel pressure without understanding its source. You may feel resistant toward things you once embraced wholeheartedly. This exhaustion is not from overthinking. It is from resisting the direction God is leading you. When He withdraws peace, He allows discomfort to rise so that obedience becomes the only path forward. He is not trying to hurt you. He is positioning you. He is turning your attention away from the familiar so you will be willing to embrace the new. What makes this phase so powerful is that it clears the noise around you. You stop relying on what once made sense and start paying attention to what your spirit is telling you. You begin to feel the difference between staying out of habit and staying out of purpose. You begin to understand that peace is not an emotion that comes and goes with circumstances. Peace is the evidence of God's presence. When it leaves, it is because God is calling you to follow Him somewhere else. The silent withdrawal of peace pushes you to listen more closely, to evaluate your life with honesty, to ask questions you ignored for years. Why can't I settle here anymore? Why does this place feel smaller than it used to? Why does my spirit feel uneasy even when everything appears fine? This moment in your journey is one of the most defining. The loss of peace is the signal that God is preparing you for movement. It is His way of saying you cannot stay where you are and still become who He is shaping you to be. The absence of peace is not instability. It is guidance. It is God's first warning sign that your season has changed, and that remaining in the same place may cost you the growth He has planned for you. When peace withdraws, it is time to lean in, pay attention, and prepare your heart for the step God is calling you to take next. The growing restlessness. There comes a stage in your journey when restlessness settles into your spirit in a way you can no longer ignore. It is not the kind of restlessness that comes from impatience or frustration. It is deeper. It rises quietly from within, like a tide that keeps pushing against the edges of your life. reminding you that you have outgrown what once felt right. You move through your day noticing small shifts in how you feel about the environment around you. The places where you once felt energized now leave you drained. The conversations that once inspired you now feel repetitive. The responsibilities that once made you proud now feel like routines you perform without purpose. Something inside is stretching, expanding, pressing against the limits of your current season. And no matter how hard you try to settle, the restlessness refuses to fade. This inner stirring is not a sign of dissatisfaction with life. It is the sign of growth. It is God preparing your soul for the next stage of your calling. When your spirit begins to outgrow your surroundings, nothing external needs to change for you to feel the shift. The same walls, the same people, the same schedule suddenly feel too small. You sense that God is calling you into deeper waters, but He has not yet shown you where those waters are. So you walk through your days with a quiet ache, not of sadness, but of anticipation. You know something is coming, even if you cannot define it. This is how God prepares you for transition. He allows your spirit to grow in size before your life grows in direction. This restlessness also reveals the places in your life where you have settled for comfort instead of calling. You may look around and realize that you have learned how to function in an atmosphere that no longer nurtures you. You have grown accustomed to patterns that no longer serve your purpose. You have invested your time in routines that no longer shape the person God is forming within you. The restlessness exposes these truths not to discourage you, but to awaken you. God stirs this feeling so that you will not cling to a season that can no longer sustain your spiritual development. He is preparing to lead you where your gifts can breathe, where your faith can expand, and where your identity in Him can flourish beyond the limitations of your current environment. As the restlessness grows, you may try to silence it through busyness, distraction, or discipline. You tell yourself that you should be grateful, that you should be content, that nothing is wrong, but the stirring persists. You may feel guilty for wanting more. You may fear the idea of change. You may question whether you are misinterpreting what you feel. Yet every time you slow down, the restlessness rises again. You feel it when you wake up. You feel it while you work. You feel it when you try to relax. It follows you because it is not coming from your mind. It is coming from your spirit. And your spirit is responding to God's movement long before your circumstances reflect what He is preparing. This restlessness is also a form of divine protection. If God allowed you to feel settled in a season that is ending, you would never move. You would stay where it feels familiar, even if it no longer aligns with the future He is shaping. So He awakens restlessness as a spiritual alarm. It tells you that the place where you stand has fulfilled its assignment. It reminds you that growth requires obedience, not certainty. It whispers that it is time to release your grip on what has been and open your heart to what will be. This kind of restlessness is not meant to frustrate you. It is meant to guide you. It is God's way of preparing your emotions so that when the door opens, you will be ready to step through it without hesitation. In this phase, you may feel like you are living between two worlds. One is the world you have known, where everything is familiar yet no longer satisfying. The other is the world God is preparing, which you cannot yet see but can feel pulling at your soul. This in-between space can feel confusing, but it is sacred. It is where God shapes your discernment. It is where He strengthens your sensitivity to His voice. It is where He sharpens your identity so you will not carry outdated versions of yourself into the next season. The growing restlessness is the sign that your roots are loosening from the soil of your past. It is the divine awakening that tells you your spirit is ready to move before your circumstances catch up. The truth is simple. When God wants to move you forward, He will not allow your spirit to remain comfortable in a place that no longer matches your growth. Restlessness is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is the evidence that something new is being prepared for you. The more it grows, the closer you are to the moment when God will reveal the next step. The restlessness is the bridge between where you have been and where you are going. It is the whisper of destiny calling your name before the path becomes visible. Pay attention to it, because it is one of the clearest signs that God is preparing to shift your life in a profound way. the door that will not open. There comes a moment in every spiritual journey when you stand before a door that simply refuses to open. You push, you try, you strategize, you pray, and still nothing moves. At first, you may feel frustrated, questioning whether it is a lack of effort or a failure on your part. But as time passes, you begin to sense a deeper truth unfolding. This door is not closed because you are unprepared or unworthy. It is closed because God is protecting you. He is preventing you from stepping into spaces that would drain you, harm you, limit you, or pull you away from the purpose He has designed for your life. When God withholds access, it is not rejection, it is direction. And the sooner you recognize it, the clearer your path becomes. You may be trying to revive opportunities that once worked for you, only to find that they collapse the moment you get close to them. A job that once fit you now seems unreachable. A relationship you once thought would last begins to slip away no matter how hard you try to hold on. A plan you believed would shape your future no longer aligns with your spirit. You might be tempted to push harder, to fight for what once felt right. But the resistance you encounter is not accidental. It is intentional. It is the hand of God stopping you from forcing your way into a place He has already removed from your journey. When a door remains closed despite your effort, God is speaking. He is rescuing you from what you cannot see. Closed doors often reveal more than open ones. They expose your desires, your fears, your habits, and your attachments. They force you to confront the question you have avoided. Are you chasing what God wants for you or what you want for yourself? A closed door is a form of divine clarity. It strips away illusions and reminds you that not every desire is aligned with your destiny. You might feel disappointed or confused, but that feeling is part of the transition. God is teaching you to see beyond the moment, to trust His timing, and to release the things that no longer carry His blessing. A closed door is not a sign that your life is shrinking. It is a sign that it is being redirected. Some doors close quietly, others close violently. Some close without warning, others close after a long season of subtle signals. But no matter how it happens, the result is the same. You are left standing in front of something that will not move. This is the moment when you must decide whether you will keep pushing or whether you will pause long enough to listen. Often, God uses these moments to stretch your faith. He wants to break your dependence on your own strength. He wants you to recognize that a door He has closed cannot be opened by human effort. And He wants you to understand that obedience is more powerful than persistence in the wrong direction. It is natural to feel discouraged when a door closes. You may wonder whether you misheard God or made a wrong decision somewhere along the way. Yet closed doors are among the clearest confirmations that God is leading you. He closes doors to prevent you from walking into places that would detour your purpose. He closes doors to protect you from people who are not equipped to walk with you. He closes doors to redirect your gifts toward environments where they can grow. Every closed door carries a message, and that message is always rooted in love. You are being pulled away from what is less so you can be prepared for what is more. Over time, you begin to realize that closed doors serve a greater purpose. They shift your attention toward what God is preparing. They break your attachment to the paths that no longer carry His anointing. They teach you to wait with expectation instead of frustration. You start noticing that for every door that refuses to open, something inside you begins to change. Your desires shift. Your sensitivity sharpens. Your understanding deepens. You begin to sense that the door is not denying you. It is releasing you. It is setting you free from the weight of forcing what God never intended to bless. When God closes a door, He always provides another path. You may not see it yet, but it is already forming. The closed door is the step before the open one. It is God rearranging circumstances, aligning opportunities, and preparing your next assignment. You stand where you are because the next chapter is being shaped in ways you cannot yet grasp. The door that will not open is the sign that your season is shifting. Your purpose is expanding and your future is being shaped by the hand of God. Recognize the blessing in the resistance. What feels like denial is often the beginning of destiny. When God removes certain people, there comes a time in your journey when people begin to drift away from your life, not through conflict or betrayal, but through a quiet and undeniable separation. It may start subtly. Someone who once spoke to you every day becomes distant. A relationship that once felt essential now feels strained. A friendship you relied on begins to fade without a clear reason. At first, you may feel confused, even hurt. You might wonder what changed, what went wrong, or what you could have done differently. Yet as the distance grows, something within you senses that this separation is not a mistake. It is a divine intervention. When God is preparing to move you forward, He often removes the people who cannot follow where He is leading you. These relational shifts do not happen carelessly. God is intentional with the people He places in your life, and He is just as intentional with the people He removes. Some individuals are meant to walk with you for a season, not a lifetime. They helped you grow, shaped your character, or supported you during specific moments, but their purpose in your story has been fulfilled. If you hold on to them beyond their time, you will find yourself burdened, drained, or spiritually stuck. So God steps in to separate what you would never separate on your own. He adjusts your relationships to protect your calling and prepare your path. At times, the separation happens because their influence no longer aligns with your assignment. You may notice that conversations that once lifted your spirit now weigh you down. The values you shared begin to diverge. The goals that once united you now lead you in different directions. Their presence, which once felt supportive, now feels restrictive. The shift is not a sign of failure but evidence of growth. When God elevates your purpose, He shifts your circle. The people who once fit your life may no longer fit the person you are becoming. And if you try to hold on to them, you will feel the tension of a life that is expanding while your relationships remain in a previous season. There are also moments when God removes people to protect your heart. You may not see the dangers, the distractions, or the spiritual interference that certain individuals bring into your life. God does. And in His mercy, He allows distance to form. You may not understand why the connection feels weaker, but that weakening is often your protection. God sees conversations you never heard, intentions you never perceived, and spiritual battles you never witnessed. When He pulls someone away from your path, it is because He is shielding you from what would hinder your purpose or delay your progress. This separation can feel painful, especially when the people leaving your life were once important to you. But the pain is often the evidence of divine realignment. God removes relationships that would anchor you in the past instead of releasing you into your future. He removes the voices that would confuse you instead of guiding you. He removes the influences that would dilute your identity instead of strengthening it. The separation is not punishment. It is preparation. It is God making room for the connections that will support your next chapter, not your previous one. As people drift away, pay attention to what rises within you. You may feel relief without wanting to admit it. You may sense peace even as the relationship ends. You may feel a strange clarity after months of confusion. These are signals that the separation is aligned with God's plan. What you lose in companionship, you gain in direction. What you release in familiarity, you gain in freedom. God removes people not to leave you isolated, but to position you for the people who will walk with you at the level He is calling you to reach. With time, you begin to see the purpose behind every separation. The silence becomes clearer. The distance becomes easier to accept. The doorway to your next season becomes visible. God never subtracts without preparing to add. Those who leave are those who cannot support what God is building in you. Those who stay are those who are equipped to strengthen your journey. And those who arrive next will carry the blessings, the alignment, and the encouragement your new season requires. When God removes certain people, it is because He is making space for the relationships that will propel you into the destiny He has prepared for your life. The loss of passion. There comes a moment when the things that once excited you begin to lose their meaning. You wake up and notice that the energy you once felt towards certain responsibilities, relationships, environments, or dreams has slowly faded. You try to rekindle it, reminding yourself of how important these things used to be. But the spark is no longer there. What once made you feel alive now feels like an obligation. What once filled your heart now leaves you indifferent. This quiet loss of passion is not a sign of laziness or failure. It is often a divine signal. God removes your desire for what no longer aligns with your purpose, because He knows you would never willingly walk away from something you still enjoy. This internal shift may confuse you at first. You may wonder why the things you once prayed for, worked for, or fought for feel strangely empty now. The activities that once inspired you now feel routine. The goals that once motivated you now feel hollow. The roles that once defined you no longer express who you are. You may try to force yourself to feel differently, but passion cannot be manufactured. When God drains the desire from something, it is because He knows the season for it has ended. He allows the enthusiasm to fade, not to frustrate you, but to free you. Without this fading, you would cling to a season that no longer grows you. This loss of passion is one of the most misunderstood signs of spiritual transition. Many interpret it as a personal flaw or a lack of discipline, but spiritually, it is often a redirection. God knows that passion is a powerful anchor. If it remained, you would stay rooted in a place He is trying to move you from. He loosens your emotional connection so that you can see the truth more clearly. You begin realizing that you have evolved. Your priorities have shifted. Your spirit is craving something deeper, something greater, something more aligned with the identity God is forming within you. The loss of passion exposes what no longer carries purpose. The more you pay attention to this internal shift, the more you understand that this is not a temporary feeling. It is a permanent transition. Even when you try to push through the lack of motivation, something feels off. You feel disconnected from your own actions. You go through the motions, but the meaning is gone. This is not spiritual weakness, it is spiritual awakening. God is not trying to take something from you. He is trying to pull you into something better. The absence of passion is the indicator that your spirit is already stepping into the next chapter, even if your circumstances have not caught up yet. As this shift continues, you may experience an internal conflict. Part of you feels guilty for not feeling the same way you used to. Another part of you knows that staying would only diminish your growth. This tension is part of the transition. God uses it to help you see clearly. When passion fades, it exposes what was seasonal rather than eternal. It reveals the difference between what once served you and what is currently shaping you. It forces you to assess your life with honesty instead of nostalgia. You may mourn the loss of what once was, but the mourning is necessary to make room for what God is preparing. The loss of passion also reveals where your spirit is being drawn. As certain desires fade, new desires begin to rise. You feel a quiet pull towards something you cannot fully articulate. You might sense a calling to change directions, explore new paths, or embrace new responsibilities. You may feel a stirring toward creativity, ministry, healing, growth, or deeper faith. This new desire does not always announce itself loudly. It begins as a whisper. But as the old passion fades, the whisper grows clearer. God drains your desire from the old so the new can begin to speak. With time, you begin to see that the loss of passion was the beginning of your liberation. It was the spiritual indicator that your identity had expanded beyond your current environment. What once defined you is no longer enough to contain the person God is shaping you to be. You are not losing passion because something is wrong with you. You are losing passion because something is right with you. Your spirit is evolving. Your purpose is expanding. Your heart is preparing for the next assignment. The fading passion is the divine clue that God is leading you toward a future that requires all of who you are, not who you were. And once you recognize this truth, you begin to embrace the loss not as an ending, but as the first step into a new chapter crafted by God Himself. The repeated message. There comes a point in your transition when God begins to speak to you through patterns that are too consistent to ignore. You start hearing the same message in different places, through different voices at different moments, all pointing to the same truth. It may appear in a verse you encounter unexpectedly, in a sermon you are not planning to hear, in a conversation with someone who has no idea what you are going through, or even in a passing thought that repeats itself with unusual clarity. At first, you may dismiss these moments as coincidences, but they persist. The same theme rises again and again, following you through your day as if God is placing markers along your path. When messages begin to repeat themselves, it is a sign that God is confirming what He has been whispering in your spirit. You may feel a strange sense of familiarity each time the message appears, as though your heart recognizes it even before your mind processes it. You might hear someone say something that echoes a thought you had just moments earlier. You may encounter a story that mirrors your situation so closely that it feels directed at you. These moments are not random. God uses repetition to draw your attention to something essential. When He wants you to move, He does not rely on chance. He speaks through alignment, He speaks through timing, He speaks through emphasis, and He speaks through patterns you cannot ignore. As this repeated message grows more evident, you begin to feel that every sign is pointing in the same direction. It is as if the world around you becomes a mirror, reflecting the same truth you have been hesitant to acknowledge. God uses repetition because He knows that clarity often comes in layers. He knows you may doubt yourself. He knows you may fear misinterpreting His voice. So He confirms His guidance not once, not twice, but repeatedly, until the message becomes unmistakable. The repetition is a form of protection. It helps you recognize His voice above your emotions, your fears, and your doubts. This stage can feel intense, because the repetition often grows stronger the more you resist. If you ignore the first sign, God sends another. If you overlook the second, He sends a third. If you question the pattern, He expands it. This is not meant to overwhelm you. It is meant to reassure you that what you are sensing is real. God knows that the decision to move on is not always easy. You may cling to what is familiar, even when your spirit has outgrown it. You may want confirmation before letting go. You may fear stepping into the unknown. So God sends repeated messages to strengthen your courage and soften your resistance. These repeated confirmations often appear during moments of quiet. When your mind slows, the message rises. When your heart settles, the truth becomes clearer. God speaks through what resonates, not what is loud. He speaks through what lingers, not what flashes quickly and disappears. The repeated message is designed to settle into your spirit in a way that cannot be shaken. You begin to feel that the message is not just true, it is necessary. It is aligned, it is timely, and it is calling you to act. The more you pay attention, the more you notice that the repeated message brings a sense of peace even while it challenges you. It may confront you, stretch you, or call you out of your comfort zone, but something inside you recognizes its rightness. The repetition does not create confusion. It creates clarity. It aligns your thoughts, your emotions, and your spirit with the direction God is pointing you toward. Every time the message appears, it pushes you one step closer to the truth you have been hesitant to embrace. As the repeated message becomes impossible to deny, you begin to understand that God is not trying to persuade you. He is preparing you. He is guiding you toward a decision that will shift your life. He is confirming that the uneasiness you felt, the atmosphere that changed, the withdrawal of peace, the restlessness, and the closed doors were not isolated experiences. They were parts of a larger conversation He has been having with your spirit. The repetition ties them all together. It forms the foundation for obedience. And once you recognize the consistency of God's voice, you realize that the next step is not only clear, it is inevitable. God speaks repeatedly because He wants you to move with confidence, not fear. The war inside. There comes a moment in every transition when the battle shifts inward. You feel pulled in two directions at once, as if your spirit and your flesh are no longer walking in agreement. On one side, your comfort begs you to stay where you are. It reminds you of the familiarity, the predictability, the safety of what you have always known. On the other side, Your spirit urges you towards something new, something deeper, something aligned with the direction God is calling you to follow. This internal conflict is not a sign of confusion. It is the evidence that God is awakening you. The war inside you begins the moment your spirit recognizes a truth your mind has not yet accepted. This internal struggle does not appear suddenly. It grows gradually, rising each time you try to settle into a life that no longer fits the person you are becoming. You may sit in a place that once gave you comfort and feel a quiet ache that tells you something has shifted. You may sense that your heart is no longer satisfied with what used to feel enough. You may try to silence the feeling, telling yourself that you should be content, but the tension refuses to fade. This is because your spirit knows something your comfort does not. It knows that staying where you are will cost you the growth God has prepared for your future. The war inside is not between right and wrong. It is between what is familiar and what is faithful. Your mind wants security. Your spirit wants obedience. Your emotions crave stability. Your purpose calls for movement. At times you may feel torn between the version of yourself that fit your old season and the version of yourself that is rising within you. You may try to hold both, but this tension only grows. God allows this struggle because He knows that without it, you might remain rooted in a place that cannot hold the fullness of your destiny. During this stage, your thoughts become sharper. You begin to evaluate whether you are staying because it is right or because it is easy. You may find yourself asking questions you avoided for years. Why do I feel disconnected here? Why does this no longer reflect who I am? Why does my heart not settle even when logic tells me it should? These questions do not come from doubt. They come from clarity. God stirs them to help you recognize the shift happening inside you. The war intensifies because you are standing at the threshold between where you have been and where you are going. This internal conflict can feel exhausting because both sides demand your attention. Your flesh reminds you of the risks, the unknowns, the fears. It warns you about leaving what you have built, what you have invested in, what you understand. Your flesh argues that moving on is reckless, but your spirit speaks with a different tone. It reminds you of the peace that disappeared, the restlessness that grew, the closed doors that would not open. It points to the repeated messages God has been sending. It whispers that staying would not protect you, it would limit you. And with each whisper, the war becomes clearer. The struggle is not evidence that you are lost. It is evidence that you are being transformed. God allows this internal tug of war to refine your discernment. He allows the discomfort to rise so you can distinguish between your will and His will. He allows the tension to grow so you will not settle for a life beneath the one He has called you to live. The war inside you is the birthing place of obedience. It strips away illusions, confronts your fears, and reveals the truth that you have been trying to avoid. You realize that the cost of staying where you are may be greater than the cost of stepping into the unknown. Eventually, something powerful begins to happen. The voice of your spirit becomes stronger. The clarity becomes brighter. The desire to obey outweighs the desire to stay comfortable. You start to see that the war inside is not meant to break you. It is meant to lead you. It pushes you toward the moment when obedience becomes the only peaceful option. When the conflict reaches its peak, it becomes clear that God is not asking for your comfort. He is asking for your trust. He is asking you to choose faith over familiarity, calling over convenience, destiny over safety. When you reach this point, you understand that the war inside is not a sign of instability. It is the final confirmation that God is positioning you for a breakthrough. The internal conflict is the announcement that your spirit is ready to move, even if your surroundings have not yet changed. And once your spirit reaches this level of readiness, the next step becomes inevitable. The war inside is not a delay. It is preparation for the moment when you will step into the new season God has been leading you toward all along. The blessing delay. There comes a point in your spiritual journey when you begin to notice something unsettling. You pray, you work, you sow seeds of faith, you try to stay obedient, yet the blessings you expected do not arrive. Opportunities stall. Progress slows. Doors that should have opened remain closed. You feel as though you are walking faithfully, yet nothing around you reflects the movement you hoped for. This is not failure. It is not abandonment. It is the blessing delay, one of the clearest signs that God is not calling you to stay where you are. When God wants you to move, He often pauses your blessings in the place you were never meant to remain. This delay is not punishment. It is protection. God knows that if He continued to bless you where you are, you would never feel the urgency to leave. You would stay anchored in a life that no longer aligns with your calling because comfort would convince you that you are meant to remain. So God slows the flow. He reduces the harvest. He allows progress to stall, not to discourage you, but to detach you from a season that can no longer sustain what He is building inside you. He is not withholding good things from you. He is positioning you for better things that require a different environment. During this period, you may feel confused. You may question whether you made a mistake or missed a sign somewhere along the path. You may wonder why your prayers seem unanswered. Yet if you look closely, you will notice that the delay has a pattern. You succeed only to a point and then everything halts. You make progress only for it to dissolve unexpectedly. You push forward only to find yourself stuck again. These pauses are not random. They are strategic. God is showing you that the blessings meant for your future cannot be poured out in the place you currently stand. As the delay continues, you begin to feel a tension within your spirit. You sense that something is out of alignment. You may even feel that your gifts are stagnating, your potential is shrinking, or your dreams are being constrained. This tension is meant to push you toward realization. God is preparing you for movement, and the blessing delay is His way of making sure you do not settle prematurely. He knows that if your current environment cannot hold your next level, then He must disrupt your comfort to release your calling. The blessing delay exposes areas in your life where you have been surviving instead of growing. It shows you where you have compromised your purpose for the sake of stability. It reveals the difference between what is familiar and what is fruitful. When blessings stop flowing, it forces you to confront the truth about your environment. Has this place finished its work in your life? Is this chapter complete? Has your purpose outgrown your current space? These are not questions of doubt. They are questions that prepare you to take the next step. As you reflect on these questions, you begin to see that the blessing delay is not a barrier. It is a compass. It directs you toward the places where God intends to release the abundance that has been withheld. You realize that the blessing was never denied. It was simply reserved for a different location, a different season, a different version of yourself. God is waiting for you to move before He moves. He is waiting for your obedience before He unveils the next phase of your destiny. This delay also strengthens your discernment. It teaches you to distinguish between seasons of stillness and seasons of stagnation. Stillness is holy. It is where God builds patience, character, and faith. Stagnation is a warning. It is where God reveals that remaining where you are may cost you what He is preparing for your future. The blessing delay helps you recognize the difference. It helps you understand that God is not asking you to try harder. He is asking you to step out. He is not asking you to force progress. He is asking you to trust His direction. Eventually, you begin to sense a shift within your heart. You realize that the delay is not meant to break your faith. It is meant to redirect it. It is meant to move your focus from the place you are to the place God is calling you toward. The blessing delay becomes the turning point. It becomes the moment you understand that God has not forgotten you. He is guiding you. He is preparing you. He is orchestrating blessings that require your presence in a new season. And once you recognize this, the delay is no longer discouraging. It becomes the confirmation that your next chapter is waiting for you to take the first step toward it. The new season. There comes a moment in your journey when, after all the discomfort, the restlessness, the repeated signs, and the delay of blessings, something inside you begins to shift. It is subtle at first, but unmistakable. You sense that the space around you is no longer the limit of your life. You feel a quiet pull toward something greater, something broader, something that speaks to the person you are becoming, rather than the person you have been. This shift is not rooted in frustration or escape. It is rooted in alignment. It is the realization that the season you are stepping into carries a different weight, a deeper purpose, and a clearer identity. This is the beginning of the new season God has been preparing for you. A new season rarely announces itself with loud changes. It usually begins internally. You start to feel hope where there was heaviness. You feel clarity where there was confusion. You feel peace in places that once caused tension. This inner renewal is the first sign that the transition is nearing completion. God has been preparing you through every stage: the discomfort, the withdrawal of peace, the restlessness, the separation, the closed doors, and the delayed blessings. All of it has led you to this moment. The new season begins when your heart becomes ready before your circumstances change. God shifts your spirit first so that you can recognize the opportunities He will soon place before you. As this new season forms within you, your perspective changes without effort. You start looking at your life with fresh eyes. What once felt overwhelming now feels unnecessary. What once felt essential now feels temporary. What once held you now releases you without resistance. This clarity is not accidental. It is spiritual alignment. God is helping you detach from what cannot follow you into the new chapter. He is breaking the emotional ties that would hold you back. He is expanding your vision so that you can see beyond the boundaries of your old life. This new clarity is the evidence that you are stepping into a season built on purpose rather than survival. In a new season, desire returns. Not the old desires that kept you in cycles, but new desires that reflect your growth. You feel a pull toward places you have not explored, ideas you have ignored, dreams you once pushed aside. You begin to sense that God is calling you into deeper waters, into opportunities that challenge you, but also excite you. The new season carries a different tone. It is not forced, it is not chaotic. It is peaceful, steady, and full of quiet confidence. You no longer cling to what is ending because everything in you senses that something greater is beginning. This stage is also marked by divine alignment. You start noticing open doors that appear without your effort. Conversations happen at the right moment. People cross your path who feel connected to your future, not your past. Resources, ideas, and opportunities begin to line up in ways you could not have orchestrated on your own. This alignment is proof that the waiting was not wasted. God was arranging this new season long before you recognized it. Now your inner readiness meets His outer provision. This meeting point is where transformation takes shape. You may also notice a renewed sense of identity. The insecurities that once held you back feel weaker. The doubts that once defined your decisions lose their influence. You begin to see yourself as God sees you, not as life shaped you. This renewed identity is not pride, it is spiritual clarity. It is the realization that God has been shaping you through every discomfort, every silence, every conflict. The person you are now is stronger, wiser, and more aligned with your calling than the person you were when this journey began. As your new season becomes clearer, fear begins to fade. It does not disappear completely, but it loses power. The unknown no longer feels threatening, it feels promising. You start to understand that obedience is not a risk, it is protection. The new season reveals that what you thought was the end of something was actually the beginning of something far more meaningful. You see that God never asked you to leave something without preparing something greater to meet you on the other side. Eventually, you reach a moment when the new season becomes undeniable. The signs align. Your spirit confirms it. The peace returns. The clarity strengthens. The opportunities appear. You no longer ask whether you should move. You ask how soon you can begin. This is the evidence that God has completed the internal transformation required for the external shift. The discomfort was the preparation. The restlessness was the awakening. The repeated message was the confirmation. The delay was the repositioning. And now the new season becomes the revelation. The new season is not a reward. It is the unfolding of the purpose God has been preparing for you. It is the chapter where everything He taught you begins to make sense. When you step into it, you realize that God was not leading you away from something. He was leading you toward something. And now, for the first time in a long time, your spirit and your path finally agree. What once felt impossible now feels inevitable. The new season reveals that God was guiding you all along. Final call. There comes a moment when everything you have heard, everything you have felt, and everything God has been stirring inside you converges into a single, undeniable truth. You realize that none of the signs were random. The discomfort was not a phase. The restlessness was not impatience. The repeated messages were not coincidences. The closed doors were not failures. The loss of passion was not weakness. Every tension, every whisper, every shift was God guiding you with remarkable clarity. And now, standing at the edge of this moment, you feel something you have not felt in a long time. You feel certainty. You feel conviction. You feel the quiet but steady assurance that God has been preparing you for this exact turning point. You may look back and see all the moments when you tried to deny the shift. You may remember the times you told yourself you could hold on a little longer, endure a little more, or somehow force your way through what was clearly ending. But now you see that God was not trying to take something from you. He was trying to take you somewhere. He was creating a path you could not reach while anchored to a season that had already fulfilled its purpose. The heaviness you felt was the weight of staying where your spirit no longer belonged. The peace you lost was the signal that your assignment had changed. The war inside was your spirit rejecting limitation because God was calling you to expansion. This is the moment when everything becomes clear. You understand that obedience is not just about leaving something behind. It is about stepping toward the life God has been shaping for you. You feel the shift in your breathing, in your thinking, in your confidence. You feel the calm certainty that comes when your spirit aligns with God's voice. You begin to understand that moving on is not a sign of failure or fear. It is an act of faith. It is an act of trust. It is a declaration that you believe God more than you believe your comfort, more than your doubts, more than the fears that once held you still. As this realization settles in your heart, you begin to see that your new season is not waiting for you to feel ready. It is waiting for you to say yes. You may not have every detail. You may not see the entire path, but you know enough to take the next step. God does not ask for certainty. He asks for trust. He asks for willingness. He asks for a heart that is open enough to leave what is ended and embrace what is beginning. And now, with everything inside you awakening to truth, you understand that the first step is your declaration of faith. It is your answer to the call God has been speaking over your life. This is the confirmation you have been praying for. This is the clarity you have been waiting for. This is the moment when the signs, the whispers, and the patterns finally connect. God is telling you to move on, not because He wants to remove you, but because He wants to elevate you. Not because He wants to isolate you, but because He wants to position you. Not because He wants to end something, but because He wants to begin something far greater than you imagined. The next chapter is already written. The path is already prepared. The blessings that were paused are waiting for your obedience to be released. Now is the time to make the decision your spirit has been preparing for. You do not need to see everything to trust the one who sees everything. You do not need to understand the whole picture to follow the one who holds it. You only need to take the step that is in front of you. God has been guiding you with love, with patience, with precision. And now He is offering you the most powerful invitation to change your life. If this message found you today, it is not by chance. It is God confirming what you already felt deep inside. The season has shifted. The time has come. Do not ignore the signs. God is calling you forward.